Armani Code EDP 2024 versus Code Parfum versus Code EDT. What are some of the similarities and differences and which one is the best? I'm going to compare them in different ways and rank them from my least favorite to my most favorite. The newest code is the Eau de Parfum released earlier this year, which replaced the previous code Eau de Parfum released in 2021. Code EDT was released in 2023 and Code Parfum is a 2022 release. Now usually in my comparisons I go through each fragrance separately, but in this comparison I'm gonna go through the opening side by side, then move through to the mids and through to dry downs, and then ultimately compare them when it comes to performance, usage and more. Hopefully that will make it easier to compare them. Let me know in the comments if you prefer this kind of comparison or the way I usually do them. So let's start with the opening of Armani Code EDP 2024. This to me opens up with a mix of citrusy freshness that's got a bit of sweetness to it and a bit of spicy warmth. The nutmeg cuts through in a really nice way and it's basically a mix of freshness and warmth. Let's move on to the opening of Code EDT. It has a slightly different citrusy fresh opening compared to the new Code EDP 2024. To me it's brighter and just feels lighter, and it's most likely because it doesn't have the spicy warmth that the Eau de Parfum has. Right behind that initial citrusy freshness there's lavender, and it's pretty much a combo of citrusy and aromatic freshness with a bit of soft sweetness to it. So moving on to Code Parfum. Code Parfum's opening is without a single doubt the most intensely fresh out of the three. To me it's a really nice dose of citrusy freshness with bergamot that after a few minutes transitions into a mix of citrusy and herbaceous freshness that's softly sweet. Comparing the openings of the three, Code Parfum is definitely the freshest, with Code EDT slightly behind it and Code EDP 2024 going in a slightly different direction with a mix of spicy warmth and freshness. Code EDP's opening feels like it has slightly more sweetness to it compared to the other two, but none of them are intensely sweet in the opening. They all center around the same theme, but in different ways, and I think they are all very mass appealing and likable. As Code EDP 2024 moves past the opening, it gets more intensely spicy and also a bit more sweet. So that initial spiciness of the opening is more intense and the soft sweetness it has is now more noticeable. Really nothing complicated, but this is a very likable scent for sure. The mids is where Code EDT really moves away from the newer Eau de Parfum. The lavender is still there but less intense, and it's changing to a mix of vanilla and woodiness. The lavender brings the vanillic and woody mix a bit of aromatic brightness and shine. However, the mids is definitely not as fresh as the opening. Code Parfum is quite different compared to the other two in that it has changed into a mix of powderness and freshness. There's a bit of freshness from the opening, but it's mostly about the freshness of the iris. It's powdery, clean and fresh and slightly creamy. Just like the openings, I feel that the mids are very likable and hard to go wrong with. These are all done in a very mass appealing way, but the mids is where they do start to go in different ways. The EDP's spicy sweetness is different compared to the EDT's woody and vanillic mix, and the Parfum goes in its own way with fresh powderness. If you enjoy spicy sweet scents more, then Code EDP 2024 is the best one for that. However, if you prefer something that is more sort of a powdery and fresh, then the Parfum is the best one for that. As Code EDP 2024 moves into the dry down, you finally get a bit of that sort of a signature code tonka bean. And at this point it's primarily a spicy vanilla that's sweet and a bit ambery. It's not intensely sweet though, and there's a creamy feel to it in the dry down. It's almost like a lighter version of the original Code EDP with a bit of Code Profumo to it, but going in a slightly different direction. The dry down of Code EDT has grown on me more and more, and it's mostly about vanilla and cedar that's a bit ambery and a bit sweet. The dry down is also where you finally get a proper dose of that sort of a signature Code DNA. Code Parfum's dry down is mostly about a light kind of woodiness from cedar wood, together with a bit of vanilla, and is still powdery. Woody, vanillic and powdery with a bit of sweetness. While the dry down does have a bit of depth to it, at least to me, Code Parfum is not a heavy scent, and the scent has an airy kind of powderiness to it. The dry down is where the main differences are quite clear. Again, at least to me, they all center around the same theme, but in different ways. Code EDP 2024 is spicy, vanillic and sweet. The dry down is my favorite part of it, and I do enjoy the sexy sweetness it has. Code EDT is vanillic, woody and sweet. Whereas Code EDP 2024 has the spicy side, EDT has a more creamy feel to it in the dry down. Code Parfum is also woody and vanillic in the dry down, and parts of the dry down has some similarities to the EDT. But to me it feels more airy and light with its fresh powderness and also less sweet compared to both of the others. We are going by scent first in this comparison, but let's quickly compare the performance of the three. Code EDP 2024 on my skin is not a strong scent. I know some of you get great performance out of it, but on my skin this is somewhere around average or so. I get a slightly above average projection with the EDT with a decent longevity. It's not a strong fragrance either though, and the performance of the EDT does feel kind of similar to the new Code EDP. Code Parfum on me is definitely above average and I get quite good longevity from it. However, Code Parfum is nowhere near beast mode, but out of these three, the Parfum has the best performance. So let's talk a bit about usage. I know some would probably disagree. However, I do feel that all of these three are scents that can be used throughout the year. While the dry downs of all three have a bit more sort of depth to them, none of them are too intense in any way, too deep or too heavy in any way. But with that said, Code Parfum, at least to me, is slightly more versatile with its more fresh powdery scent. As for occasions, same thing. I think all three work for pretty much any occasion. When it comes to compliments and mass appeal, that Code DNA and pretty much the entire line is a very mass appealing one. These are all very likable men's fragrances. So who are these for? The new Code EDP 2024 is for someone who loves a bit of spiciness and sweetness with that Code Vanilla DNA. Its spiciness and sweetness is really what separates it from the other two. Code EDT is for someone who loves lavender and wants that Code Vanilla DNA in a woody and sort of a creamy way with a bit of sweetness. Code Parfum is an easy one. If you absolutely love powdery fresh scents and that Code Vanilla DNA, then you most likely absolutely love it. In a way, Code EDT feels like a slimmed down version of Code Parfum but with a twist. They both focus on woodiness and vanilla with that Code DNA and a bit of freshness. But the freshness is a bit different and Code Parfum is more fresh and also powdery. Code EDP 2024 and EDT share some similarities, especially in the dry down, but there's a bit of a difference as I previously described. So which of them is the best? So I went back and forth when it comes to third place. And you went through like multiple wearings of both side by side, but I'm gonna put the EDT on third place. It's not bad, the dry down is a nice one and I do like this version of that Code DNA. But Code EDP and its spicy vanilla and its bigger dose of sexy sweetness slightly sort of edge out the EDT. But none of the two are as good as the Parfum. I think they pretty much nailed it with this release. Almost perfectly balanced with its freshness, woodiness and vanilla, and I'm addicted to its airy powderiness. So Code Parfum is my absolute favorite out of these three. Now I would absolutely love to know which of these you think is the best and how you would rank them from your least favorite to your most favorite.